generator, they didn't have this screw for the ground. I put it in there. What? A little pinch. Okay. Get to the starter relay. It's upside down so that you couldn't get to these screws. He had one screw one way, one screw the other way. So I've flipped it. Wiring diagram says you get those for the main post. And see, they got a ground on the yellow and a spade on the brown. Where I've got a spade on the yellow, and that's where the brown used to be. But I'm thinking that both of these connections, one way or another, are looking for ground. See, I think this yellow wire runs up to the vacuum switch. And the brown wire, I think, goes down to the neutral safety. So, if I'm looking for ground or I'm looking for ground, what difference does it make? Dimmer switch has this 3-prong connector. And the doggone thing is so brittle. You can see what's happened to it when you had to, because they don't give you a new one of these, to get the spades out of one and into the other. So I was able to put the spades onto the dimmer switch. The dimmer switch goes down in there. I also found the neutral safety switch wire had broken. And in fact, here it is here. And so that wasn't hooked up, which could be another reason why it wouldn't crank with the key. There is a substantial feed wire coming off of the battery feed that runs to power seat power window. I didn't get a new one, and so I should make a new one of these. Really pretty simple. And what about a fuse in there? The voltage regulator, they had it wired wrong. So I checked and checked and checked, and I checked the other car too. But it's pretty obvious where things are supposed to go. So I don't know if that's cooked. I don't know if that's good, but they had it wrong. And I got the rest of the original wiring out from under the dash. Long runner goes over to the glove box switch. You gotta take the upper piece out of here in order to remove the there's a high beam lamp, and then there's a map light. Yeah. So it's all out. There's a lot of sockets I got to take off and reuse. But that's as far as I can go today. Oh, this I could not get the new one to fit in. I couldn't get the old one to fit in the new one. I had to cut the edges down a little bit. Now it does fit. Now I'll just feed the wires once I figure out where things go. So this is that housing for the map light and turn high beam light. And this is the socket they gave you that they want you to use. it won't fit. So you have to reuse the old socket anyway for this one, but I'm going to have to cut this off and reuse the old socket because it fits better. But that ain't ever going to fit. 57 and 58 Chryslers are kind of unique in that you push the neutral button here to start it. Well, you turn the key on and then you push that button. So that means there's a switch on the back of this neutral button. Well, there is one of the wires for the switch, and here is the other wire. This is not what you want to see. But it just broke right off there. So, that switch, where is it? That's the neutral push button assembly. You can see the one wire coming down from it. There's the switch up in there. I think the only way you can get that to that switch to reattach the wire is to remove the push button assembly. Well, there's a chrome strip here that has to come off. Then there's a few Phillips, and you can take this chin plate off of here, and then that exposes, let's see, there. That thing with the one black wire all the way in the back, that's the switch we got to get to. So, how does this come out? Well, I bet it goes that way. Well, no, it doesn't. You can go just a little bit in there, and then you start hitting cowl pieces. So, apparently, we're going to have to disconnect these two screws to release the cable and pull it this way. These are the things you don't know until you do it once, and they take up a lot of time to learn. Oh, well. So there's that brace, and there's the cable, and the brace is held on here and here, and the cable goes here. Well, I'm sure these are going to be fun to try to get back in. So there's your push button assembly, and yes, it does come out this way. And here is my offender. There's your neutral switch. And you can see one wire, but not two. Let's see what we can do. So let's give it a test. Got my ohm meter on here, set for audible. There you go. Continuing with the wiring. Probably should paint these while I have them out. Oh, there you go. Transmissions painted and buttoned up and refreshed. Looks good. That neutral button with the little tiny letters on the word start. It's tough because after so many pushings, the plastic has worn down and there's not much depth to the printing. So, take what you got and move on. I was searching and searching for the headlight switch. And couldn't find it. I said, well, no, that's the wiper switch. No, in 57, that's the headlight switch. Because, they've got the rheostat up here, and then the actual switch back here, which kind of looks like a windshield washer switch. So, looking. Was running my feet all the time. So now I'll continue. And there's the firewall insulation blanket installed. Whoops. These push pins that you can buy. This is and there, you can see one right there. Well, you cannot just push these through. You cannot hammer them through. They're too flexible. You have to go around to the other side and grab this end with a pair of pliers and then pull it through. And the ones that you can't get to the ends, you can't do. I tried putting something in here. It's just too flexible, and they just don't. Number 99 firewall pad pins. Be prepared to be disappointed. Continuing with the wiring, I've finished the gauge cluster. That really goes pretty quickly because there aren't that many connections to it. So now I'm working my way that way. Got the ignition switch wired and just hanging loose. Then we come to the glove box light, which is up in there, which is this thing. And they give you a light socket, but just like the other light socket, it's way too small. That's the correct size. So you got no choice but to cut and splice this one back in. And then just a wire to the door switch, and we're pretty well done to that point. So before I start button things up, like putting this pod on and mounting those switches, I thought it'd be a good idea to test. So you can take your auxiliary battery and feed the battery terminal on the ignition switch, and the car thinks it's hot. And you can go to the headlight switch and check for park lights, and then you can check for low beams, high beams. You can check to see that your indicator comes on, that your license plate works, license plate light works, and your tail lights. So I did all that, and yes, they are all working. So I can button up the headlight switch. By the way, when you're working under these cars, or under these dashboards, take the brake pedal off and take the gas pedal off, because you got to get your head in there so you can look up this way. And the brake pedal's right in the way. Stuff's got to come off before stuff can go back on. This is the back side of the pod that holds the brake pedal, emergency brake, parking brake, and wiper and headlight switch. And I could not figure what the wire connected to here. What am I missing? What am I missing? See, because there's just this plastic piece. So I'm looking and looking and looking and looking. And then finally came across a spare pod. There's the piece. That metal piece had broken off. I could have looked forever. So now I'll just switch that into here. These pods are held on with a series of screws and nuts. And they can be very difficult to install. When you have the speedometer out, it makes installation or removal of the pod a whole lot easier, because those nuts, which I showed you, they're loose. But you can reach in here and get your nut started on the screws and then get things tightened down. Headlight and wiper switch. You see the shaft has a D cut in it? Well, the D goes on the bottom. You could install it the other way around, but then your button will be upside down. And these nuts can be very hard to get started because, you know, you've lost half of the threads here in order to make this D shape that they've got so it locks in the pod. So you've got to get these nuts threaded on both the top and the bottom part. And if they don't thread in finger easy, you don't have it right. You start putting a wrench on it, you'll sideways the threads and be real sorry. This one, by the way, is yeah, that one's nice 16ths. So you end up having to pull out your biggest wrench in order to install it. So coming along, headlights, wipers installed. You can, and I've been testing as I'm going. Got my parking brake light working. Just about 5 wires up in here left to connect, and then lamps. Home stretch.